Are you ready for some good news? Christ came to bring a radically new covenant that's radically better than the old. Here's today's text, 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 14. But their minds were hardened, for to this day when they read the old covenant, that same veil remains unlifted, because only through Christ is it taken away. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the tablets of the law, his face shone brilliantly because he had become radiant with God's glory. The Israelites were afraid to come near him. So Moses started putting a veil over his face, except for the times when he went before the Lord. The full glory of God was too much for the people of Israel. They settled for a veiled look at God's light. Well, Paul seizes upon this memorable image in the history of Israel to describe the superiority of the new covenant and the ministry of the Spirit. To this day, Paul asserts, if people focus on the law, it's as though a veil over the brightest glory of God remains. But where the focus is on the grace of Christ, the veil is lifted, and we can behold the glory of God directly. In other words, wherever there's legalism, there's a veil over the heart that obscures Jesus and darkens the glory of the gospel. But if you turn to Christ instead of the law, you discover the power and freedom of the Spirit. It's not by accident or coincidence that when Christ was crucified, the thick veil in the temple suddenly ripped asunder. That veil that fenced off all but the high priest was forever rent apart, and a new and living way was inaugurated for all who turned to Christ. God in Christ accomplished all that was needed for His complete unveiling. God's glory, therefore, is no longer hidden when the gospel is announced. But if the law is read, legalistic renderings of the gospel, it's as though the veil returns. But you in Christ are invited to the throne of God's grace, the inner sanctum of His wonderful holy presence, where by the finished work of Christ you're thoroughly qualified to encounter the glory of God. You can live in the grace of God and see His wonders unveiled. And that's the gospel. Well, that is today's daily devotional. If you want to learn more about how you can come into the presence of God with the new covenant unveiled, then go get the whole message. It's free at sharingthelight.org.